Kenny. Senator Murphy, do you want to come in?
First of all, welcome to Mr. Ducey and Ms. Hayes, and thank you for your presentation. I'm not going to rehash questions I've asked before because, as Deputy Harkin said, I've been, I think it's the third time we've been dealing with this issue, specifically in relation to the Western Corridor. And anyhow, I have to go and catch the train to get home, so I can't stay here too long. I now leave my car at home all day and I use train. And look, I think wonderful things can be done with that Western Rail Corridor. But I tend to agree with my two previous speakers here, my colleagues. You know, I get the feeling there's a distance between two groups that shouldn't be there. I really feel that. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I've looked and I've read all of this, and that shouldn't be the way, because there's good can come out of both of these situations. So I've just looked here at the wording of the county plan in 22-28, and I'm looking at the words, an existing barrier relating to a Greenway route in this location relates to the commitment in the 22-28 Mayo County plan, which commits under MT09 that the Western Rail Corridor is protected and reserved for the delivery of rail infrastructure to develop the region, and the corridor is completely removed from any feasibility study in relation to any proposed freeway. And I dealt with a lot of council issues in my time, and I just, the wording just sort of hits me as that it's a total block, and I could be wrong. But the question I want to ask you here is, realistically, we're all common sense people here. This is not going to come on stream, if it does come on stream, for many, many years. And in the meantime, is there not a grave danger that we're going to fall between two stools and that this particular line falls into disrepair? And if that happens, then whatever option you go with, it's going to cost an awful lot more to do. So again, would it not, in the meantime, and I understand from talking to some of the rail people, if that had to go in and had to be moved off again in time, so be it. But in the meantime, to preserve that and to allow the Greenway to be opened up, could not that be done? And would that not make sense? That's my only question to you.
Thanks, Senator. I suppose in relation to the county development plan and the objective that was inserted by the elected members in exercise of their statutory functions in the development of the development plan. And from a funding perspective, if a funding application were to come in from the local authority in relation to a project that the development plan states simply excludes effectively, that would be a barrier to providing funding. How could you provide funding to something that the development plan says cannot be funded effectively? So we have an issue in terms of that current objective with regard to our capacity, or the capacity of TII rather, to consider a funding application with regard to that particular project. I mean, that's just a fundamental issue here.
And what about the decline of the railway line if we get caught between two stools? And again, I am a big fan of railway travel myself. I do leave my car at home an odd day now. I think it's lovely and we can do. But again, I think we should be looking at this in terms of falling between two stools. And that line, whatever is the final option, falls into more disrepair. Yeah. And any project then that you go to, well, you might never deliver a project if this happens, if it's left there. But if you were to deliver a project, it's going to cost an awful lot more if the line is left there for year after year after year. You know this yourselves,
Yeah, I suppose just to clarify for people so everyone's on a common understanding, in terms of firstly, as I said in the statement, the draft Alliance Strategic Rail Review does not propose a reinstatement of that particular section of the line. But secondly, in any of those sections of the line, be it Athenry Claremorris or northward, the line that's there, and your comments around falling into further disrepair, a reinstatement of any of those lines, it's the corridor that's the most important thing. It's not the infrastructure that's there. That will all be taken up, and there'll be new infrastructure put in terms of if it were to be a rail solution. And that would be the case in the Athenry Claremorris line as well. It is not a case of, to be slightly flippant, cutting back the weeds and letting the train roll on the tracks that are there. Everything will be taken up. So the falling into disrepair of that infrastructure there, it's not necessarily an additional cost to whatever solution is ultimately arrived at. It's the corridor that's the prize, I suppose.
Well, again, you get to that, materials could be an awful lot more expensive, you know?
No, absolutely, in terms of, the long term and building inflation, etc. Yes, that point absolutely stands, yeah. Thanks, Deputy. So I might just answer, I think it straddles probably both contributions there over the last few minutes. So, Deputy Harkin, in terms of your question to me, it is factually the case that Iarnród Éireann grant a licence for these greenways, and that's the factual position on it, and therefore the ownership remains vested within Iarnród Éireann/CIE. I suppose, Deputy Kenny, you made your comments earlier on regarding that objective within the county development plan. Like, obviously, I can't speak to the motivations that led to the inclusion of it. It was a function of the elected members, and it's their right to do so. As a matter of fact, our department did not support the inclusion of that particular objective, and our department did suggest use of the term transport corridor to be reflected in that particular objective. But again, it's a function of elected members, and it's in their right to make the development plan as they see fit, and they made that development plan in line with their statutory functions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ducey. If members are happy enough? Yes. Yeah, you happy enough? No. And Mr. Ducey, you're happy enough? You don't need to say closing statement, no, nothing. Well, first, I suppose I'd like to thank Mr. Ducey and Ms. Hayes from the Department of Transport for coming in to speak to us today. Definitely the discussion definitely had to be heard, and do you know what, it was very, very beneficial to see the different departments and how they work, and how maybe they're not joined up, but with Public Committee will have to consider what steps now we're going to have to take to open it up again. But I do thank you very much, and I thank the members and those in the gallery today. So we will now suspend the meeting for 5 minutes to allow the witnesses to leave. So this meeting is suspended.